Welcome back to another episode of the Buzzworthy Consultant Podcast, where we chat with leading consultants like today's guest, Adam Christener, founder of OnLeaf, a national recognized agency that helps businesses scale through a data-driven search marketing strategy and AI-powered marketing systemizations. Adam has supported brands such as Dallas-Fort Worth Airport, Smiths, and the University of Idaho. His thought leadership has been featured in publications including the Wall Street Journal, Business Insider, and MarketWatch. Let's see what makes Adam so buzzworthy. Welcome to the show, Adam.
Hey, Buzz. It's good to chat with you once again.
Yeah,
How you doing?
Pretty good. For all those who don't know, Adam and I have known each other for a couple of years. Been in the mastermind together, and a couple conferences. You're actually speaking at a international conference coming up here real soon, right?
Yeah. I got two overseas events this year. One is in the works, potentially in Lithuania, seems promising, and then another this summer here in Mexico. And so, yeah, definitely excited about that. Um, I say I'm slowing down from speaking this year, but it's there's still plenty to be done in that realm. So
Oh
the
my
year
God.
before last, I was gone like almost every month,
Oh,
all over the
really?
world,
Well,
jet setting. Yeah.
congratulations. That's
So I
awesome.
was,
And then what
but
do
this
you?
year was my slower year, but knock
But
on
you
wood,
were trying to do that, right? You were trying to
that was
slow
the
down.
goal. Yeah.
That was the goal. There you go. I'm speeding up this year.
Okay.
Yeah, next month I have 4 speaking engagements in a mastermind in Houston, Texas. 4 different
Nice.
chapters of the same mastermind. So that's pretty interesting. It's going to be pretty cool. I am actually supposed to be on vacation
Yeah.
in Missouri, and I'm like
Okay.
halfway through. I have to fly down to Houston, talk for 3 days, and then fly
Mhm.
back up for a few days, and then on my way home, go back down for a day, and then head back to Virginia. So it's been crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hear you. We're heading out of town actually tomorrow for Costa Rica for most of the summer. I'm flying right from Costa Rica to Cancun, Mexico for a talk, and so it's going to
Nice.
be a exciting summer. Sounds like,
Nice.
but yeah, it's fun to, when you can figure out how to mix business with pleasure, especially on the speaking side, and
Yeah.
that's why I'm these days I'm a little bit more selective on where I speak. But if there's somewhere interesting or exotic that gives me an excuse to travel,
Of
um,
course.
I'm saying yes to a handful of those at least, right?
There you
So
go. And speaking of business, you're in the business primarily in the search marketing space, as
correct.
you and I usually geek out on.
Hmm.
I've been doing it since 2009, and you've been doing it for almost as long.
Yep.
And so one of the things I wanted to bring on the show today is to talk about AI and its
Hmm.
impact on search marketing. Because a lot of
Sure.
people are saying nowadays, like I was in a group just the other day, and they were like,
Hmm.
the speaker was like, SEO is dead. Anybody who's selling you SEO is ripping you off. And I literally had to like excuse myself and go, I'm sorry. I think you might have misspoke just a little bit and had to go through, where we're going. And I wanted to let you start the conversation of like, what impact do you feel AI has on search? And how are people searching these days now that AI is around?
Yeah, I mean, this idea that SEO is dead, right? I guess I get where people are coming from in that we are in yet another disruptive phase, and AI is very much a disruption to you know the original moniker of SEO, right? But at the end of the day, large language models are in and of themselves almost like a new type of search engine, right? As
Hmm.
long as there are businesses to be found, there's going to be means and mechanisms for people to find them, right?
Hmm.
Now, I think when people say SEO is dead, what if you read between the lines, what they're saying is that the days of Google being the predominant, like primary mechanism at which people find, answers to their questions, like that is shifting, right? And so
Hmm.
I wouldn't say that SEO is dead. I would say that it's fractured and evolving, and evolving
Mhm,
quickly, right?
mhm,
Um, Now, Google is not going out with a fight. I still think that at the end of the day, they're going to be one of the players. However, the competition is starting to emerge with things like OpenAI's ChatGPT. And so we're going to have to get used to, as search marketers and even business entrepreneurs, we're going to have to get used to, um, having an understanding that people are going to find us in more and more diverse ways, right? Which, let's be
Mhm.
honest, the means at which people find out about businesses, it becomes more and more fractured each and every year, right? It's
Mm.
no longer is it just Facebook and Google, right? We have TikTok and a plethora of social media platforms and large language models, and so yeah, SEO is by no means dead, but it is changing. It is evolving. What it's going to be in the next 24 months is not what it was the prior 24 months.
I would agree with that. And I mean, even me, I mean, I remember back when Firefox was like the big, like you were, if you wanted to buck the system,
Mhm.
you want to do Internet Explorer, Firefox was the way to go. And then Chrome came out, and
Sure.
and I was an early adopter of the newer search, not search, but the internet surfers, right?
Mhm.
And but with that, like recently, I've actually taken ChatGPT and made it my default search engine.
Yeah,
And
you
so,
mentioned that.
yeah. And so I only actually use Google when I'm in a commercial intent, when I'm actually
Mhm.
looking to buy something. And
Sure.
so, and I think a lot of what we're seeing with Google, Gemini, like you said, they're not going out without a fight. So Gemini is built into, Google Chrome, right?
Mhm.
And so if you're a Chrome user, I think that you're going to continue to see the fruits of their labor and what they're coming out with Gemini and how they're integrating it with Gmail and Sheets. And I mean, you can get Gemini pretty
Right.
much anywhere that you got Google. And if you have a workspace, I mean, you're using Gemini. So if you
Right.
get used to a certain language, a lot of people talk about like, shoot, how many, there was Claude and Boodle and I mean, all the things. I mean, there's more than just ChatGPT out there now, right?
Of course. Yeah.
And I've tried a few of them. And as a user, I would say that ChatGPT is just I know it, and they're evolving fast
Mhm.
enough to stay ahead of what I need from it, right?
Right.
So I think that yes, I would agree with you that there's going to be some fragmentation, but I have yet to see where the user trend is going to make Google a minority in the race. Would you agree with that? Like, I still think they'll be the majority owner of market share between YouTube and Google with Gemini.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to tell, but at this state, their market share is actually still growing, right? And so there's all this talk about ChatGPT eating Google's market share, but even Google in and of themselves, their market share is growing.
Mhm.
Rand Fishkin, formerly of Moz, put out a really good case study slash article on this. It really talks about the dynamics here, right?
Mhm.
Um, I do think what LLMs provide, and this is gonna and already is rolling into, Google and other platforms, is a broader way in which we search as well, right?
Right.
Like the days of, best pizza near me, those searches, you know, uh, are I'm sure people are still searching that way, but now we can say, do searches like show me the top 5 uh, pizza restaurants that are owned by a single operator that have a mom and pop nuance, right? Like
Right. Right. Right.
that level of search intent is something that really wasn't it didn't really fit within the traditional search models. And so
No.
I think as behavior changes, honestly, um, while we are in a shift, there's going to be more opportunities, right? And we're
Mm.
seeing already e-commerce start to float into LLMs. For
Hmm.
instance, I just posted something on my Facebook page about something that's been quietly rolled out into ChatGPT, where you can essentially there's a link where you can submit manually your product to ChatGPT, your product-based e-commerce business, essentially to get ahead of the line, right? And
Mm.
so a lot of these large language models, I should say ChatGPT specifically, and Google will probably soon follow. are already incorporating a lot of e-commerce capabilities and functionality into their large language models, right?
Yeah.
So they're they're playing the same game in a
Hmm.
different wrapper, and so yeah, we are in an interesting arms race. But
Yeah.
I
You
I
got
think
Spotify even is integrating OpenAI into their model, aren't they?
I'm not aware of that, but I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
there's some
mean,
talk about like basically utilizing the LLM to in the ChatGPT space so that um the when you're doing the chat that you actually have propensity to for and I don't know exactly how it's working, so I'll probably misspeak. So put comments in the chat if you know better than the two of us here. But for what I've heard so far is that it's going to allow for kind of what you're talking about, but specifically in the Shopify space is like that kind of jump to the front of the line because it's learning all of the descriptions in a Shopify
oh, I
cart.
thought you said Spotify.
Oh no,
So yeah,
Shopify.
there
Yeah.
yeah, with Shopify there are actually integrations, uh, directly, basically, Shopify and ChatGPT have announced like a partnership, right? I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. I haven't done a ton of testing on the ramifications, but the idea is that you're going to be able to, do purchase or purchase type transactions right within the large language model.
That's amazing,
Um,
isn't it?
yeah, and so again, like I think like so many things in technology, it's easy to get used to a system and a process that works, and then things happen and it gets disruptive, and it can be challenging not only for business owners but for marketers who got reliant on a particular process or product set, right? And so um like we're facing that now, right? We're having to have conversations internally on like, hey, how dependent do we want to be on off-page SEO, right? Is this
Mm-hmm.
something that we can start pulling back, right? Which
Mm-hmm.
in one front is actually, I think, a benefit, because it's a pretty cost intensive part of what we do for a campaign.
Mm-hmm.
But with large language models, there's a question in my mind, and I'm sure data and time will tell how reliant are large language models on traditional ranking signals such as off-page SEO, right? In my
Mm-hmm.
mind and my understanding, they cling a lot more onto semantic relevance, brand signals across entities, which might become the new aspect of off-page SEO. Things like schema markup also allow search engines as
Huge.
well as large language models to understand relevance and context. And so again, it's we're kind of in one of those wild west areas, but I
Mm-hmm.
think for the businesses that are keeping their eyes open, like this is also an opportunity to get ahead into these new acquisition models, and so that's what we're trying to do, and the communication that we're providing to our clients is like, hey, let's weather this storm, and if we're early, you're probably going to be a beneficiary to that, right?
Right. And I think that I mean, a lot of people are saying, oh, you got to change how you're doing everything. But I mean, from where we're standing, I mean, we have clients that are already ranking in the top links of the LLM responses, right?
Right.
And we didn't
Yeah.
do anything different. And I think that people
Right.
don't realize is like robots are still robots.
Yeah.
And it's even been brought to light that I mean the LLMs like OpenAI, ChatGPT are still working on some of the constructs that Google has already put in place for almost 10 years now with the
Yeah.
EAT.
Right.
When we're looking at expertise, experience, expertise, authority, and trust, right? And it's like, okay, you got those right there. And the things that they're looking at for those types of things are still the same things that traditional SEO has for a while now relied on. And it's not the same SEO as in the 2000s, the early 2000s, or even the early 2000 teens before iOS 14 and all that other stuff.
Mhm.
But I still think that people who are trying to abandon the fundamentals are actually going to undo a lot of good work they've already done. And like I think
Well,
you hit the nail on the head with the semantics and your space of like how many places are you where do you have conversation share, right?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, and that's the key is like search engines have been pushing businesses, and marketers to really focus on brand, right? And for a long time, it's been a challenging puzzle. That's why they rolled out, the EAT type protocols, so to speak, and all of these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
But large language models have the same generalized challenge as a search engine. How do they prioritize what shows up versus
Mm-hmm.
what doesn't, right? Now
Mm-hmm.
the model in which the user interface is experienced is different, but the challenge is the same, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we're doubling down on building brands, helping clients build brands, building PR type scenarios. um you know Even chat gbt sits on the backbone of Microsoft Bing, and while it's not a direct parallel between how the Google and Microsoft Bing algorithms work, there are enough parallels that good best practice SEO works in both of those search engines and then floats to the top, right? The other opportunity I see too is, as these systems like Google's AI overviews, for instance, as they start to roll out, as is typically the case, usually there is a lot more wiggle room, essentially, to take advantage of the system as they're trying to refine it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And also, these AI overview results are now, for the first time, showing an organic type um, digital real estate that's above even Google advertising, right?
Right. Right.
And
That's what,
so,
yeah, that's what I'm talking
so,
about.
so again, there's going to be deficits. I think the biggest deficit is going to be with attribution, right? And then
Mm,
some click through rate. We're already seeing click through rates kind of come down a little bit, um, but for the first time in a long time, an organic type traffic channel is now predominant once again. Now, the
right.
traditional organic traffic channels are even further buried, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so this kind of goes back to what I was saying before, where we're going to see for a short term, things becoming more fractured, and there are eventually going to be systems that help with attribution. Google is, announced that Google Search Console is soon going to be rolling out some kind of AI, attribution. We'll see when that comes and what that,
And what they're
sh-
reporting.
yeah, what it shows.
Yeah.
Um,
Is it going to be
but
Gemini and then all others?
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, there are models and that we played with to try to get chat gbt attribution, but none of them are quite dialed in at this point as far as Google Analytics is concerned. So
Well, I mean, you're also talking about, I mean, now you're going back into, the fight in, was that 2016 when, iOS 14, where privacy comes in there, because if,
mhm.
in order to give like an LLM like ChatGPT attribution, that means that there's got to be some sort of transparency of that search being reported somewhere. And
Right,
I don't see us stepping backwards in that space. People are already worried that AI is going to take over the world. So
sure.
I think it's going to stay locked down. So, I'm interested to see how attribution is going to be in the organic space, obviously going to have
Mhm.
that. I mean, but we've already seen even the paid traffic attribution getting diluted.
Sure.
With one of our clients, we recently just saw this enormous influx of Google business profiles
Yeah.
traffic that just is like out of the world, and then our attribution. So we see the conversions, but we don't see the attribution, so we don't see the actual flow in. And
Hmm.
so people, I think, are going in and out of the ecosystems that we've set in place for attribution. So I agree with you that it's going to be an uphill battle, and maybe even going back in time where, when we had radio and TV and print, and you
Hmm.
could only say, hey, if I spend more, do I get more?
Right.
And you're looking at the lagging attribution model as far as that goes. And I mean, shoot, we've already done it with streaming,
Yeah.
right? We all now pay for a subscription and still have to watch commercials. So cable
Right.
television is back. So I
Yeah.
don't, and a lot of people say, it's like, oh yeah, we're progressing forward. Well, sometimes we progress backwards,
Yeah.
right? We go back to what we know, and capitalists are going to do that because they know that's
Right.
how they can make money, right? So
Yeah. Well, and let's be honest, a lot of these big companies don't necessarily, it's not always in their best interest, the Googles and the Facebooks of the world, to
Mm-hmm.
give you full attribution, right? Which is why you have discrepancies in attribution models, right? If
Right.
anyone who's ever you worked with Shopify and compared it to Google Analytics knows well, the differences, right? It's like, well, why is
Mm-hmm.
there such a discrepancy? Well, they don't even do the same attribution model. Shopify's got a last click attribution, and
Right.
then Google has a database or data driven attribution. And, like we recently wrote a blog post on the topic just because we kept getting so many questions about it. And it's like, hey, let's break this down. But like, you know, attribution has become more and more diluted over time. And
Mm.
so, yeah, I mean, maybe that's the challenging news is for a lot of businesses that I think in the short term and maybe for the long term, attribution is going to become more and more fuzzy. But at the same time, it's like, are you just going to stop marketing? Like, are you
Right.
just going to stop being present? Especially when there are opportunities to show up in these new verticals? Like, that's not the answer either. And
Mm-mm.
so, maybe
Huh?
we do return to more of a holistic sense of, hey, we notice when we do these 3 or 4 things that the phone rings more or there's more foot traffic into our storefront.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, that's
But
the
omnichannel,
dynamic that we're going through right now.
yeah, but I mean, omnichannel has become more and more of the space as it is, right? Even though it's
Right.
all technically free, you still have
Hmm.
bandwidth and all the other stuff. There's a cost of being on too many channels.
Sure.
And if you stop making noise, you're just going to get buried quicker because
Yeah.
you're going to have to catch up when you decide, oh, well, being quiet doesn't do any good.
Right.
Because that's these LLMs, that's how they're learning is how
Yep.
often are you, what type of voice share do you have?
Hmm.
And if you don't have a lot of voice share, which means like when people are talking about Gary Vee, I'm not a big fan of Gary Vee. I like the guy, don't get me wrong, and have a beer with him. But like when he talks about creating 68 pieces of content every day, I mean,
Hmm.
that will bury some small businesses. But I mean,
Sure.
we're in that space now where the
Yeah.
robots, they don't know any better, right?
Yeah.
Hey, this
Yep.
person's on that channel, that channel, that channel, that podcast, that podcast, that podcast. I mean, that's what, we're all doing in the podcast world is like, hey,
Right.
having your own show is great, but you need to be out there talking on other people's show so that
Hmm.
when an LLM is asked, hey, what's the best podcast to talk about XYZ? Well,
Hmm.
so and so is not only has a show and it might be ranked, but also they're on other people's shows. And so now that means that they have that trust factor, right? Kind of like backlinks
Right.
used to be, right? That's
Yep.
everybody's talking about this person because they're
Yeah.
talking to everybody, right?
Yep.
So how are these small businesses like you were talking, you mentioned the brick and mortars, maybe even some of
Mhm.
the e-coms. I mean, what right now should they be? What advice would you have coming, finishing up 2025 and coming into 26? What advice do you have in their search marketing strategy with AI?
Yeah, I mean, as it relates to brand, I would say on the more holistic like aspect of things, figure out how to make a brand, right?
Hmm.
But what I'm seeing work more and more, and it seems like the market has really kind of moved almost more away from large like business brands. Now that's still
Hmm.
relevant, right? Like,
Hmm. Hmm.
but it seems like the personal brand has so much more pull than it ever did before, right? And
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
that doesn't have to necessarily be the founder or the CEO of a company, right? If you have
Hmm.
somebody that is going to be with the business for a while, or you have some kind of contractual arrangement, um, you know, find somebody that can be the voice of your brand, right? And if you can't make that happen, then double down on, your business brand as a whole, right? And then think about all of the different things that entails. What does a large corporate brand do? And obviously, you're not going to do all of those things, but get involved in social media. Make sure your website has a nice presence. Make sure that your brand is mentioned on these larger channels, right? Everything from LinkedIn to Reddit to these other platforms, because that is going to be the aggregation and the cross-referential model that I think is going to make you stand out, right? I think a lot about, for instance, the way that we do Google Business Profile, aka Google Maps optimization, right? For
Hmm.
a long time and still today, a big part of how that mechanism works is they use what's called the NAP, the name, website, or name, address, website, and phone number, right? And as long as that data is consistent on your website and across various local directories, your Yellow Books, your Yelp, all those things, Google would then say, okay, this is an authoritative, trustworthy brand. But you want to extract that out to your own brand, either your personal brand or your business brand, and say, does my brand represented across all of these big dominant players, so that when search engines or even more so LLMs go and aggregate this stuff, they see positive mention here or there, and they aggregate that together. My understanding is that, that is probably the best model to get that visibility and trust, so that you show up in that digital real estate more prominently than the competition.